Hey guys, how are you doing? Welcome back, and we are talking about syntactic categories, or in other words, parts of speech. So what we want to do is we want to have a couple of tests that we can use to determine for sure 100% what is the syntactic category of each word of a sentence. And so those tests are going to be of two types. There's what we call the morphological tests, and then there's the syntactic tests. And those are provided in the handout that you have. It says lecture on parts of speech. There's a summary that you have there which gives all of the examples of how to apply the test. So we're going to go through all of those right now. So first, thinking about the morphological evidence, if you think about the example, the sloopy male chicks scattered drowsily to the meadow. So let's look at this example. The sloopy male chicks scattered drowsily to the meadow. Some of you may be familiar with this sentence because this is a sentence from the novel A Clockwork Orange, and it's an actual sentence in the novel that the author uses in which way? Let's take a look at the sentence. So when you have a sentence like the sloopy male chicks scattered drowsily to the meadow, what is your big question? Your big question is, what does this thing mean, right? Because we don't know what some of these words are. What does it mean to be sloopy? What does it mean to be a male chick? What does it mean to do something drowsily? And what is a meadow? So we have all of these words that we haven't heard before, we're not familiar with. And so we might think, well, given that the sentence is filled with words that we're not familiar with, maybe we just can't say anything about the structure of the sentence or the features of the words that comprise the sentence. However, if you think about it, in looking at this sentence, the sloopy male chicks scattered drowsily to the meadow, we could determine that the word male chicks actually is a noun. If we wanted to label it in terms of its syntactic category, we would label it as a noun. And why is that? What is it about this word that lets us know that even though we have never heard of this word, it's functioning as a noun in this example? And the reason is that this word appears with what looks like the plural marker s, right? So we might not know what a male chick is, but we know that male chicks are plural form of male chick, so more than one male chick. And so because we have that knowledge about English morphology, in other words, English word structure, that allows us to look at words that are not even English words and determine what part of speech they are. Another thing that would help us to determine that this is a noun is the position that it is occurring in the sentence, because we have this, the sloopy male chicks, at the initial part of the sentence, and we're going to see that that's where typically the subject of the sentence appears. The subject of the sentence is always comprised of a noun phrase. So that would be another reason for thinking that this guy, male chicks, is going to be categorized as a noun, even though we don't know what a male chick is, right? We have no idea how to define that term. But just in terms of how it is used in this sentence, we can determine, well, it's got to be a noun. And then if we take a look here at the word sloopy, okay, so what does it mean to describe something as sloopy? We don't know because it's not an English word. However, if you think about the role that this word is playing in the sentence, the sloopy male chicks, what is going on here with sloopy? It's describing the male chicks. It's telling you some information about the male chicks. We don't know what that is. What does it mean to be sloopy versus non-sloopy? but we know that the male chicks are being described as being sloopy. So in other words, we know that sloopy is an adjective. Why do we know that? Because an adjective is something that by definition describes a noun. If you have a word that is describing a noun, modifying a noun, then it is necessarily an adjective. And we can see that in this position, between the determiner the and the noun male chick is exactly where we find adjectives in English. So if we put a real adjective in here, the blue male chicks, scattered drowsily to the nest of, the happy male chicks, scattered drowsily to the nest of, they would occur in this position. In other words, it would not be possible to say in English, the male chicks happy, scattered drowsily to the nest of, where happy would be modifying male chicks. Or the male chicks red, scattered drowsily to the nest of, where the word red would be describing male chicks, like a color term. That's not possible in English, although we know that it is possible in other languages. English makes use of a rule whereby the adjective occurs before the noun that it modifies. And so that information is part of what we unconsciously know about English sentence structure. That's something that no one ever needs to have taught you. If you have never been to school, if you have never learned to read and write, you still know that information about English because you know how to speak and use and understand English. So everything that we're going to talk about in this class is related to what it is that the knowledge of any speaker of English is going to have. What we're going to talk about actually is quite removed from what we think of as being the written form of English, because oftentimes the written form of English does not represent very well what it is that we say. Everyone who studies English as a second language knows that it is a very difficult language to master in terms of its writing system because we have words like tough. And so you might think, okay, tough, that's going to correspond to the symbol that we have here for T. But why is OU being pronounced as in this word, when in other words it could be pronounced as O? So if we change the word to though, now we have OU and it's pronounced in a different way, O versus here. GH. Why does GH sound like, because usually is written this way. So English has a very large mismatch between what we say and what we write. And what it is that we want to get a hold of is how can we describe what it is that any English speaker knows, whether they happen to know anything about writing or not. Because what is essential to any human language is that it is spoken. In fact, most of the languages that are spoken in the world today are not written languages. Only about 10% of the world's languages are written languages. And the 90% that exist apart from those are not written. So that has to do with culture and history. It has nothing to do with the language per se. All languages are going to have the same basic structure regardless of whether they are written or not. So what about the mesto? We don't know what a mesto is, right? But what can we say about this word? We can say that this necessarily is a noun. And how do we know that? We know that because of the position of mesto in the sentence. Look where it's occurring. It's occurring after the definite article the. And we know that what occurs after the definite article the is a noun. So the cat, the dog, the horse, the car, all of these guys are instances of nominals. So even though you don't know what a mesto is, you know that in this sentence it has to be a noun. So what we've seen with this sentence is that even when you have words of a sentence that are not English words, in other words, that you don't know the definition of, you can still determine quite a bit about what their syntactic category status is by looking at, first of all, what is going on within the word. If you have a plural marker, you're going to be a noun. And also, what's going on with respect to other words in the sentence. So here you have sleepy occurring before a noun, you know that must be an adjective. Here you have mesto occurring after a determiner, a definite article, and you know that it must be a noun. So what we're going to try to do in this class is to bring conscious all of this information that we have stored in our brains that we use every time we speak, every time we listen to someone, and we don't think about it as we're doing about it. We don't analyze everything that we're saying as, okay, there was a noun, no, I'm making a noun phrase, here comes the prepositional phrase, but all of that is going on in our heads unconsciously, automatically, which is really, really incredible. And when we get to the end of the semester, I hope you will agree that it is massively incredible when you discover how complex English syntax is. It is in each and every one of our heads. So what we're doing in this class is really just making that knowledge conscious. Okay, I'm going to take a break now.